Hey folks, so I got Linux installed on the ARM board and it's running. It's a very stripped down distribution for now while I'm figuring out exactly what I'm doing here between this and the rest of the hardware there. I've got the Linux side of the drivers running for the Apple2Pi stuff, and that's pretty much the ARM side of things is done there. Now I just need to finish the Apple II side here on my breadboard here. Now here's the schematic of the Apple2Pi interface. It's basically just a serial interface. It's like a super serial card with no ROM. I don't know if my crappy phone will focus on it or not, but one big difference here that I'm a little bit dubious of, no offense to the original designer of this contraption, is that the 6551 requires a clock signal to operate in high-speed mode. And it's deriving its clock off of the GPIO header of the Pi board instead of using a crystal oscillator. And I was a little worried about that, especially in testing here, because until I actually make myself a real board that the Pi card will plug directly into, it's going to be attached to the Apple II side of things via this great big old long ribbon cable. And I was afraid that a cable that long would have severe consequences for that clock signal, because I think it is a fairly fast clock. I don't know. Yeah. I've got the sweep time on the scope set to 1 microsecond, so I think it's an 8 megahertz clock, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember what the data sheet says. Anyway, and so I hooked the scope up to the other end of this cable here to the ground on the clock pin there, and as you can see, it is ringing like a church bell. So I don't know if that clock signal will be too dirty or not. I may just have to go ahead and get an oscillator pot and stick on that board there instead of driving it off of the Pi board anyway. We'll see. Well, for comparison's sake, here's the same clock signal without the ribbon cable, and it's the slopes are a little straighter, but it's still ringing pretty bad. That may just be my crappy scope or my crappy non-attenuating scope leads. I don't know. Maybe it'll be fine with the ribbon cable after all. I guess the only way to know for sure is to try it and see. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's what we're working on now. All I've really got to do to finish this is solder a pin header on for the ribbon cable and solder some jumpers between the it and the breadboard and the card edge connector there in the breadboard, and then that'll be done and we can test it. Alright. I have the prototype all wired up with a mess of wires there, but it's not plugged in to the ARM board yet. I'm gonna power it up and see if we get a puff of magical blue smoke or anything. Hopefully if we do, it'll come out of those chips rather than these chips. But oh man, this makes me nervous. I haven't built anything like this for 20 years. Let's see what happens. Well, nothing exploded and the self-test is running, so that's a positive sign. Alright, I had some trouble. I couldn't get the Pi to stay working. It kept rebooting itself and throwing undervoltage messages, but it turned out that I had to go down and get a second USB power supply. I'd been powering the Pi off of the same power supply that I'd been using for this this HDMI converter. And so I went and got a different one because I need to run both of them at the same time now, and it turned out that the one that I'd gotten that I was trying to run the Pi on just couldn't supply enough power. So I switched them, and the Pi is staying on now, and I was really scared. I thought I'd broken something, and I checked all of my connections and crap, and it was just insane. But dumb. Anyway, it's working now, and we've got the Apple2Pi daemon running on the Raspberry Pi, which is connected to the ribbon cable, which goes over and plugs into the proto board, well, the breadboard that's got everything wired up. We've got the extra disk drive controller plugged in. We've got it plugged into the floppy emulator. I have verified that it's booting the Apple2Pi disk image, but this is going to be the first time we try it with the contraption installed and hooked up to the Raspberry Pi. So let's see if any magic blue smoke comes out. Oh, nope. Oh, and by the way, I've got the keyboard coming out of here and plugging into the test board here. So stuff's happening. Starting the Apple II. Oh, hey. Ooh. I'll be damned, it connected. So now that it's connected, we should be able to type on the Apple II keyboard, and the client software on the Apple II will send packets through the board that we built, through the ribbon cable, into the Raspberry Pi, and the daemon on the Raspberry Pi will inject input events into the Linux kernel, and we ought to see things come up here. Ah, but the caps lock is on. I'll be darned, that's pretty cool. That's pretty darn cool. Ha. Ha. Hi there. Period. Return. Well, this... I didn't think it would work the first time. I'm really kind of surprised. But that's cool, that's cool. So now I'm half tempted to build a real one on a real piece of perf board. But with our keyboard modification, and I'm gonna have some other circuitry on it too that controls power to the Pi board, the layout might end up changing, and I don't want to have to desolder a bunch of stuff. So I'm just going to use this thing as it is for the moment, and I guess we'll build a real one once we get all the rest of this garbage working. Yeah. Alright. Cool. The client-server software that runs between the Apple II and the ARM unit does more than just send keyboard events. You can, for example, cross-compile 6502 code on the ARM and then upload it or download it or transfer it to the Apple II and execute it on the native hardware. It gives you access to the disk drives either as raw devices, or you can mount the Apple II, well, Pro-DOS disks under the Unix file system, and lots of cool stuff like that. It's pretty freaking keen, so I'm pleased that it's working, and really rather surprised that it worked the first time and the magic smoke didn't come out of anything. So, pretty cool. Okay, I guess that's it for now. See you later.